You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 568, Ashes to Ashes.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Norman Lau. Each week on Mission Log, we examine an episode of Star Trek, picking it apart for the morals, meanings, and messages, and asking ourselves if it holds up in this lifetime or the next.
This week, Ashes to Ashes, the one where we get to meet Ensign Ballard again for the first time, which is during her second life, where she's not really who she was, but we're not sure. And neither is she. Norman, welcome back. Glad that you are here. We get to round out a couple more episodes of Voyager, and then we got a couple of guests, and then you're going to be back, and that's how it goes.
Yeah, I'm absolutely looking forward to it. I loved the way that you kind of phrased the intro to Ashes, because, yeah, you're right. It's kind of like you're playing Second Life with your second life.
Yeah.
You're playing your first life in Second Life. So, yeah, it's a little bit of, who's on first, what's on second.
It's great. I feel like it's one of those only in science fiction kind of stories. And again, leave it to Voyager to just do something crazy and wild and throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. But we'll come back to that. So in the meantime, as all of you are pondering that, Norman, why don't you tell them where they can reach us?
We'd love to hear from you. Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Find us on Facebook at Mission Log Pods and Threads at Roddenberry Podcasts. The conversation always continues in the Mission Log Discord with near daily live events and 24/7 chat about the topics you love. Get your invitation to our private server by joining patreon.com/missionlog. While you're at it, one of the most important ways to help the podcasts you love is to leave a 5-star rating and a review at Apple or your favorite podcast platform. And always remember, your comments could be used on the show. And now here's John Champion with this week's trivia.
All right, trivia for Ashes to Ashes. We have a story credited to Ronald Wilkerson, and it has been a little while since we saw a story credit from him. He contributed to 4 episodes of TNG, including Lower Decks and Schisms. On Voyager. On Voyager, we've seen his work for A Learning Curve. No big surprise there. And Imaginary Friend. But this marks the last of his work in the Trek franchise. The teleplay is credited to Robert Doherty, and we've been on a little bit of a streak with Robert, who we last discussed with the script for Sunkatse, and prior to that, he had already written Riddles, Bliss, and Vis-a-Vis for Voyager. He is sticking with Voyager right until the very end, so we will see his name more than a few more times. This was directed by Terry Wendell, and we are right in the middle of Terry's directing streak on Voyager with the 5th of his 10 episodes. We most recently covered his work on the Voyager Conspiracy. And remember that Terry also had quite a career in visual effects work before adding directing credits to his resume. When he's done with Voyager, we will catch him just one more time on Enterprise. Now let's meet our guest stars. Welcome back to all of our returning Borg kids, not you first. And naturally, we've got an appearance by Scarlett Palmers as Naomi Wildman because it's about time she had some friends her own age. Corette is played by Kevin Lowe. The only other genre credit in his resume is for a 1993 film called Alien Intruder, but during the same decade, Kevin was making appearances on everything from Murphy Brown to Picket Fences to Baywatch. He had recurring roles on Sunset Beach and The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. His final professional credit is for the L.A. Noire video game in 2011, and sadly, we lost Kevin in 2023 at the age of 63. Finally, in the somewhat dual role of Jet Laya and Lindsay Ballard is Kim Rhodes. Kim has had long recurring roles in Supernatural, The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and a very long stint on Another World, and that's just to name a few. More recently, she has had a run on Kung Fu, the more recent series from 2021. She's a guest star who usually comes back, and it's no surprise that the cast and crew of Voyager remembered her well. She was encouraged to audition for the role of T'Pol on Enterprise, and while she didn't get cast there, it is a story that you can hear on Connor and Dominic's podcast, by the way. She did provide her voice for the Star Trek Away Team video game, and later on, Jetlaya returned when Kim voiced the character for Star Trek Online.
Welcome to the Delta Quadrant, home of trying to place the place where we can face the face, whichever face we happen to be wearing.
Prologue. A large starship is firing upon a shuttle being piloted by an alien woman. She calls back to the attacker in their alien language, and she manages to fire back to make her escape. Then she tells her computer to locate Voyager and, in perfect Federation standard, asks for a response. Act 1. Hey, remember the Borg kids we met last week? Well, one of them, Mazzotti, is in astrometrics, just doing stuff, pushing buttons by herself. She picks up the signal from the alien woman who's looking for Voyager. Mazzotti introduces herself and asks the woman's species. The woman says it's complicated and requests to speak with Janeway, but before Mazzotti can comply, she accidentally cuts the transmission. Tuvok walks in and warns Mazzotti to stay out of restricted areas. When Seven arrives with the other Borg children, she scolds Mazzotti for leaving the cargo bay, admitting to Tuvok that managing them has been a challenge. But Mazzotti finally mentions the mysterious alien she's been talking to, and Tuvok reopens the channel. The alien instantly recognizes Tuvok's voice and insists on speaking with Janeway. On the bridge, the crew is stunned when the alien identifies herself as Ensign Ballard, who died 3 years ago. Skeptical, Janeway listens as Lindsay tries to prove her identity by citing the exact date of her death. She requests to beam aboard, and Janeway agrees under a level 10 force field, just the standard precaution. Harry chimes in that he and Lindsay were close, and he would likely be able to tell if it's really her. In sickbay, the doctor examines the alien, Lindsay, while she recounts her story. She was killed on an away mission and later revived by the Kobali, a species that reproduces by reanimating the dead. They altered her DNA and tried to make her accept her new life with a new family and everything, but after playing along for years, she stole a shuttle and went looking for Voyager. The doctor confirms that her remaining human DNA matches Voyager's records. Janeway welcomes Ballard home, and Harry asks for a moment alone and a heartfelt hug with his old friend. Act 2. In the conference room, Voyager's senior staff welcomes Lindsay back. Janeway calls her a fine officer, B'Elanna offers her old post in engineering, and Neelix and Tom have already retrieved her personal items from storage. Tuvok has also made some tactical preparations just in case the Kobali come back around. Privately, Lindsay tells Janeway she's grateful for welcoming her back on board and always felt like she might have been overlooked. Janeway says that was her mistake. Lindsay and Harry reminisce a bit more about the past. She tells him that she made a list of things to do if she ever returned, including hearing him play music again. That's number 26 on the list, by the way. Meanwhile, in the mess hall, Neelix organizes a cut-as-cut game with Naomi and the Borg children. When the twins cheat using their neural interface, Seven punishes them. Icheb rebels, knocking the game over and refusing to properly follow proper punishment protocol, leaving in frustration. Later, in Lindsay's quarters, she and Harry unpack her things. He admits he couldn't bring himself to recycle them after her death. They talk about their time at the academy, and Harry shares that he delivered her eulogy, telling people to live by her motto, own the day. The moment is broken by a laugh when she realizes that she no longer needs her old hairbrush for her hairless Kobali guise. The doctor calls Lindsay to sickbay, and he confirms that Ballard's DNA has permanently changed, but he can alter her appearance to look human. She agrees, and the first treatment slightly changes the shape of her face and her skin color, a dramatic step closer to who she was. Act 3. In the mess hall, Neelix serves Lindsay a Jabalian berry salad, a meal she had missed until she tastes it. Her altered Kobali physiology makes it metallic and unappetizing, a stark reminder of how much she has changed. Reporting to her shift in engineering, Lindsay impresses B'Elanna by arriving early and easily fixing a dilithium alignment issue. But the moment turns awkward. B'Elanna points out that she spoke Kabali without even realizing it. Other engineers stare, and Lindsay's confidence turns into a kind of embarrassment. Meanwhile, Chakotay reviews Seven's rigid schedule for the Borg children, pointing out that it treats them like drones rather than individuals. When she asks to be relieved of her guardianship, he refuses. Tom, oh, come on, Tom, ribs Kim about his history with women because, of course, now including the dearly departed. Harry insists his feelings for Lindsay are in the past, but Tom still teases because he obviously cannot help himself ever. Later, the Doctor completes Lindsay's human appearance, including a fresh red-tinted coif. Harry invites her to go ice skating on the holodeck, but she has dinner plans with Janeway. Over peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, a last-minute swap for a failed pot roast, Lindsay suddenly questions why she was chosen for the mission that led to her death. Janeway insists it was because she was the best for the job, but Lindsay struggles with lingering doubts and then repeats a Kabali aphorism about living again after death. That night, she dreams of attending her own funeral, haunted by the vision of a Kabali man calling her Jetlaya. Shaken, Lindsay goes straight to Harry's quarters in the middle of the night, confiding that she feels out of place on Voyager. Harry reassures her, saying he'll help her through this, and finally admits that he's been crazy about her since they met. They're both moved to own the day and share a kiss. Act 4. Seven has the Borg kids in an art class, exercising their sculpting skills on geometric shapes. The twins have made precise Borg cubes. Icheb has crafted a 26-sided polyhedron, but Mazati's sculpture is a crude figure of Seven herself. Seven reminds Mazati that they were supposed to create geometric shapes, but to Icheb's shock, she thinks twice about it and praises the sculpture for demonstrating ingenuity and individuality. Instead of punishment, she simply tells Mazati to resume your disorder. Harry wakes to find Lindsay sitting in the dark. They're coming, she says. Moments later, a Kabali ship hails Voyager. Correct, the man from Lindsay's dream, demands to see his daughter, Jetlaya. Janeway refuses, saying Lindsay has chosen to stay, but Lindsay says she'll meet him. Correct is shocked by her human appearance, but insists that she is not Lindsay anymore. Lindsay is dead. When he pleads with her to return, mentioning her Kabali sister, Lindsay coldly tells him, tell her that her sister is dead, and walks out. Correct warns Janeway that he will return with reinforcements. Later in the mess hall, Harry tries to cheer Lindsay up with a prank idea, tweaking Tuvok's Temple of Tepanet holodeck monks to chant Ferengi limericks. Making Tuvok laugh was number 32 on her list, after all. But she's distracted, realizing she remembers nothing about her human father. Just as she agrees to some light holodeck shenanigans, she doubles over in pain, her face morphing a little closer to its Kabali form. Act 5. The Doctor finds that the Kabali pathogen that overwrote Lindsay's DNA has adapted. She now needs treatments twice a day to maintain her human appearance. Frustrated, she lashes out in Kabali at the Doctor and Harry before running off, embarrassed by her own outburst. Harry finds her in the shuttle bay, where she admits that she no longer feels like she belongs. She thought Voyager had changed, but now she realizes she has. The woman Harry loved died 3 years ago. When the Kabali attack, she rushes to the bridge and tells Janeway to surrender her. She's ready to go home. Harry protests, but Lindsay assures him that this time, at least, they've had the chance to say goodbye. The attack stops, and the Kabali ships stay in formation with Voyager. After suspending the treatments, Lindsay's physiology has fully transformed back to the Kabali, Jetlaya. In the transporter room, Harry says goodbye in Kabali, poorly, but it's the thought that counts. Jetlaya smiles and kisses him farewell. Later in the mess hall, Harry sits alone with Lindsay's hairbrush until Mazati joins him. She invites him to the holodeck, where the Borg kids have been allowed to pick their own program. Kim suggests the Temple of Tepanet. Boring, Mazati declares. He grins. Not if we make a few tweaks. The end.
Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. John, let's see if the proof of the pudding is under the crust.
Oh, man. Wow. Coming in hot. I love it.
That's an old school one, isn't it?
That's good. I don't know if this is a Brannon thing specifically or if it's just his influence, but I really like Voyager's short action-packed teaser segments. And I really like the idea of this opening with very little dialogue we can actually understand. Yeah.
I like that. I like the action was there. Kind of like the intrigue was there. I liked seeing like the alien heads-up displays in the shuttlecraft, in Jedliah's shuttlecraft or Lindsay's shuttlecraft. And I just like it that it was just, I don't know, just intriguing. You know? It just draws you in.
And by the way, did you, because I always watch with subtitles no matter what when I'm doing show prep. And I love that the subtitles were just in the Kabali language.
Yeah.
That they didn't even give an English translation,
Super
which
smart.
sometimes happens. Yeah. Now, when we get onto Voyager, why is nobody paying attention to comms? Because you just have this one kid in astrometrics. Where's the bridge crew? What's happening up there? Why is she there by herself?
I mean, as much as I love Mazzotti, of all the children, so a child answering comms and a distress signal on top of that. So what could go wrong? Right?
Look, I can't tell you as an adult how many times in my professional life I have tried to transfer a call and completely cut that person off. So this is even worse. A child, it is a distress call.
Right.
Do not trust me if you're trying to reach somebody else.
Right.
Now, and watch out, because if you're Mazzotti and you see Tuvok coming in and he's trying to take care and wrangle these kids, like, do not involve Tuvok unless you expect the pointing finger of discipline.
I'm sad.
That's what I wanted to see.
I'm sad that we did not get a reprise of the Tuvok finger in this situation.
We should have.
Yeah.
But now we got 7. And of course, 7 has got difficulty with the kids, which I'm here for. I'm ready for that. But by the way, and I hate to drop some logic on this, but okay, we meet Jedliah, a.k.a. Lindsay. How did she get to the same place that Voyager is 3 years later? Because Voyager has been jumping around. It has made these like 10,000 light year jumps. People in our audience have said, no, like Voyager is now firmly in the beta quadrant at this point. So, yeah, I don't know.
You know what? Science, or alien science, because there's going to be alien science aplenty later on in our discussion.
There we go. Okay, I like it.
Speaking of science, so lowering a level 10 force field,
Yeah.
based on someone's pretty kind of obscure word that hasn't really been 100% confirmed. That's a good idea, right?
Yeah. Maybe. I just say, we like the cut of her jib. She seems nice.
Right, exactly. She seems familiar, but not familiar. So, yeah.
I'm intrigued by the premise for this species, though, because it's not unlike the Vidians. It's like taking that an extra step. Of course, the Vidians use living flesh to kind of propagate their species to at least stay alive long enough, Or the other thing that I thought of, not necessarily a Star Trek reference, I actually thought of Plan 9 from Outer Space. Because this is the whole premise. Aliens resurrecting the recently dead because that's just what they do, and take over the Earth. That's how it happens.
Right.
But of course, I feel like it's been a while since we've had more of Harry's tragic and doomed love life. So here we go, setting that up.
Yeah, so you see like Harry embracing Lindsay, and this is like, leaning towards a Harry love story. I'm just like, should we just kind of skip to the end and tell everyone what happens? Because I don't think that there's going to be any surprise here. Spoiler alert, there's not.
Yeah. You just have to have enough show for Tom to step in and say something stupid, and then you get to the end. Yeah.
Because Tom is an expert in relationships. We all know this, right?
Completely and fully. Yeah.
So I'm going back to kind of the whole level 10 force field thing. Is it like me, or is it like the crew like way too trusting to have Lindsay back on board? Just because of like the sheer nature of what has happened in the last 6 years in Voyager with that kind of trust?
Yes, we've met shape-shifting aliens. We've met all kinds of nefarious people who would do harm given this kind of cover.
Just saying. But I do like the moment that Harry and Lindsay had in the turbolift. In all fairness, I think even with like Musetta Vander, who had that great episode with Harry or with Garrett, I think that Kim Rhodes here, I think that she so far has had the best on-screen chemistry with Garrett.
Yeah, I do not disagree, and I definitely have good things to say about her as we go further along. It's so funny, in my past rewatches of Voyager, which has been a while, so I don't always remember where things fall in the series, but that great line that Seven has, "Fun will now commence."
That is funny.
I'm so glad that we landed there.
Yeah.
It's so good. And of course, I love the pretense that she is not a good teacher because, of course, but she's got to learn. This is just a production note here. We're just not going to let the twins talk at all, because there was that one line, just a fraction of a line, but it's off screen.
Yeah.
And I wonder, does the budget really, is it stretched that thin that you just can't let one of these kids talk? Come on.
It must be one of those twin things. Like, it's kind of like Zan and Jaina. They just, their powers activate, right?
Yeah, there we go. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And then kind of all along here in our observations, there are these moments where I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of the cosmetic changes to Ballard to make her feel more like who she is. So we'll come back to that, I believe, in the next segment with a little more depth. Yeah.
So I had my ears perk up in this bit of dialogue when Lindsay said to Harry, I guess they were like sorting through some of her stuff, and she says to him, "Is that why you used to request bury-in sweeps of your dorm room?" And then Harry says, "When you live across the hall from a slob." So that's not across the quarters from a slob. That's across the dorm room from somebody.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's a little bit of a hint. They didn't even like set up the pretense of they were in Starfleet together, Starfleet Academy together.
Yep. Because remember, he changed his classes.
Yeah, exactly.
To be with her. But yeah.
Right.
But we didn't. Yeah, this sort of foreshadows that little bit. Yeah.
So also in this scene, how exactly big are like crewmen's quarters, especially deceased crewmen's quarters? Because
I know.
Huge. Like there's so much space. Like I'm surprised like her quarters wasn't, I don't know, like a makeshift, cargo bay of some kind.
We got a lot of room. You got no more Lindsay Ballard. You got no more Lon Suter.
Right.
I feel like people are going to be knocking out walls and redecorating.
Turning them into holodecks. I mean, who knows?
You could.
Because, Irish villages don't replicate themselves, right?
Yeah.
So timestamp 18 minutes. This is really interesting. Did you see Harry? I'm not exactly sure if this was a direction from if this was Garrett's kind of like, I don't know, his own input or the director's input, but he places a very nonchalant hand on Lindsay's thigh when she's about to get her first injection.
Oh, interesting.
And then she wraps her arm around Harry's arm.
Yeah.
The reason why I bring this up is because it's a very atypical thing for Asian men to do, even in those types of situations. It's a very non-stoic thing to do. So it's very telling that there's more to who she is to Harry than just being a crewman.
They have this comfort,
Yeah.
and it's nice to see. Yeah. Okay, the berry salad that she's eating, I tried to go in close. The camera kind of hides it a bit. They don't really linger on that berry salad. I think I see some earth berries in there, like some raspberries and maybe blackberries or something. But I also think like there's enoki mushrooms, so I'm not fully on board with this thing. Maybe you can tell me if people out there have watched a little bit closer than I have.
Enoki mushrooms they're very alien looking.
They are, and I love them. I love them dearly, but I don't want them in a berry salad.
Exactly. Yeah. I see that Lindsay is back in uniform and fully reinstated to full duty again. After being gone for so long, and then all of a sudden this alien version of Ensign Lindsay Ballard, who she claims to be, just is reinstated without more tests or any kind of background being done.
I guess you take Harry's word for it. That's how things work now.
I guess so.
Yeah. I love her speaking Kabali because she's so just at ease with it, and it's so natural to hear going from English or Federation Standard to Kabali and back. But I really wondered about the reaction she got from everybody in engineering. You're in Starfleet. You work with aliens. Why? What?
Yeah, I know. I felt the same way. I was thinking about that, and like they made a very specific point of kind of this prejudice projected at her. I'm like, Remember that phrase in Starfleet, to seek out new life and new civilizations?
I know. I know.
But
yeah,
see, that's the kind of paranoia that I'd expect to see after being 6 years in the Delta Quadrant dodging nefarious aliens.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But
exactly.
I don't know.
I'm glad that I had not looked up that Ronald Wilkerson also wrote Learning Curve before watching this, because it was just fun to kind of see the parallel there between, Seven learning to work with the kids, Tuvok learning to mentor his trainees. It's been years since that happened, so it's fair to revisit that and just see how Seven handles it. I think that's fun.
Sadly, no Chakotay left cross.
Oh, God, that would have been, that would have been great. Yeah.
Not on the kids, of course.
No. Not going to say who.
Yeah.
No. Look, I just feel like I'm beating a dead horse here. Tom razzing Harry about his dating life. It's just, part of me thinks, okay, this is just a very obvious bit of TV dialogue. Like, this is just the kind of thing you're going to have. We're going to give these two characters these attributes. Harry fails at love over and over again, and Tom is there to be his friend, but also razz him about it. But, please, Voyager, be better about this. Stop always making Harry the butt of the joke. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Or your Tom Talk, more like it.
Oh, I like that. I like that. I really like how Lindsay keeps changing. I like seeing, first of all, the makeup, her Kabali makeup is terrific. And then the changes in the Kabali makeup to make her more human is great. And I love how she's got this sassiness to her. Like, this is a fully formed character.
Yeah.
That we are just meeting for the first time, but just a fully grounded, fully formed character. We had this line that Harry has never been invited to dinner with Janeway, and I'm like, yeah, that tracks. And speaking of dinner, how do you burn something in a replicator?
Right.
No, because the replicator knows it's burning it because the replicator has the recipe. Unless you fed it a recipe for burnt pot roast, you shouldn't be getting a burnt pot roast.
It's strange humor,
Yeah. All right. It could have spit out a hot banana, I guess. But I love this. They have space peanut butter and jelly, and they have a space bread container. You go back, do what I did. Take a look, freeze frame on that table setting, space containers for all of that stuff, and I want it so badly.
Well, it's that kind of special bread. I wonder what kind of bread it was. But here's the thing. So, yes, she burns the pot roast, which is...
Yeah.
In and of itself, you can write an entire theme term paper on that. But she has backup PB&J just at the ready. Does she just does she just have kind of like Jif and Smuckers just like hanging out on her pantry?
That's Cargo Bay 3, where we've never gone. It's just row after row of PB&J in space containers.
She literally could have replicated PB&J as Lindsay was walking in.
Yeah,
like I just don't get it. Like, does Janeway have a fetish for PB&J at midnight? But then again, she would just replicate it there.
There's just some yeoman whose entire job is to go get the PB&J in the space containers from Cargo Bay 3 to Janeway's quarters whenever it's running low.
Oh, there'll be hell to pay when they run out of it. I mean,
there will be.
She might have to replicate it, but she might burn the PB&J.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, in a great tradition of Voyager, a dream sequence about a gathering in the mess hall with some weird, surreal, ethereal. It's a funeral, it's a birthday, but there's something wrong because the camera's all blurry and streaky. Right. I love it. I love it. And I gotta like Harry finally getting bold here and just speaking what's on his mind.
Yeah, I do like that scene where, it sets up, we know that there's something going to happen because, Harry's in bed and then Lindsay comes in and says, I have a problem. I'm very torn between something or other. And then he has the whole, I've been in love with you ever since. Mm-hmm. Now, I guess we have talking points about that maybe later on, but I do think that, again, it's one of those things that the only reason why it works for me is because their chemistry is so incredibly good together.
Yeah.
Aside from that, though, off the page, it's a little clunky, but I like how they execute it.
Right. Yeah, well, exactly. It's shot well. They're good in the moment, you know. I like this whole sculpture class scene. I just think it's fun. And one of the twins talks. He's
shocked.
Sort of a line, you know.
When I saw, I guess Mazzotti was next to Icheb, and she kind of like gets a little bit of mess on him, like because she's like flinging, pottery stuff like all over the place. I love that. Like as you go down the line, you have these three like perfectly clean tables, and you have Mazzotti just completely covered, with clay and just making a mess and really getting into it. I love that. It's like It's like if they were doing a cooking class, she'd be the one that would create the food fight.
Yeah,
right? She would throw something at someone. I don't know. There's something about their crafting her character. I'm like, man, I just don't break my heart, Voyager, and have something happen to Mazzotti later on. I'm not there at.
I know.
Just don't do it. Just don't do it.
This episode spends a good amount of time on her, and I love that because she's good and she's fun. I mean, she's not a fun character yet because obviously she's still somebody who has survived this trauma and is trying to learn who she is. But she's this fun contrast to the others because she's not getting things right. But she's still her own person. Like it's charming. It's great. And I want to see more of her. And of course, another great line, "Resume your disorder," is so good. Sounds like a great album title if anybody wants to use that. Like a Talking Heads album title if they want to take that. Again, what in the world are these punishment protocols? Because it's really disturbing to hear that such a thing exists. But go with me here with the script progression in the episode. We went from a scene of Harry and Lindsay very tenderly connecting in his quarters at 3 o'clock in the morning, whenever, because she can't sleep, right? So she goes in there. We come back. Cut to the mess hall. The kids are in there during their sculpture class. Cut back to Harry and Lindsay in his quarters, and it's dark, and he's asleep. Is it like 4 o'clock in the morning that Seven's got these kids up? Like, they have time to sculpt.
You saw the schedule.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, they have a full day planned, and a day is 26 hours long, according to some.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Well, there we go. Maybe they're on the Bajoran calendar. Yeah. I know we'll get into it in the next segment, but again, more really interesting stuff about Lindsay's true identity. What is true? What is not true? What is her identity? What is the desired identity once the dad shows up? And we'll get into that in a moment.
I mean, I do like how they immediately frame Corette as being not a threat per se.
Yeah.
He very clearly expresses his intent, the love of his daughter for Jedliah, and why he needs to bring her back home. And there's a conflict there. But I do like that it starts really adding to this equation of what does she want? What does Harry want? What does the father want? What does Janeway want? We're going to get that probably in discussion later on.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good dramatic tension building. You put two people in a room. What does person A want? What does person B want? What happens when one of them doesn't get it? That's the tension. And of course, Corette says, every life is precious to my people, but we will come back here and destroy you.
Yeah.
Every life except yours. Great line. Another, like the script for all the dramatic, heavy stuff that's happening here, there are some really funny lines like, we've got some monks to tweak. That is a good line. So yeah, more power to you, whoever wrote that one.
When the three Kabbalah ships come and attack Voyager and then surround them and escort Voyager, I really like the way it's shot. That's a really, really well-composed scene.
Yeah, that was good stuff. The doctor, we have this kind of final scene in sickbay, and I got to say that the doctor talking to Harry about Lindsay like she's not even there was weird, a strange bit of dialogue. You could have just let her be a part of that scene, but at least it goes by quickly. And I really like Harry's sensitivity in the shuttle.
Yeah.
Great moment until he starts being really presumptuous on the bridge and assuming that he knows what she wants more than she does. That was a very weird, very fast turn.
Yeah.
But bookended by, again, a really nice scene at the end. Harry gets his dramatic goodbye. But, geez, is it weird that we then go to the mess hall where he's just sitting there with a hairbrush? Because, remember, He was in the transporter room. He had to go back to his room or Lindsay's room, get the hairbrush, then go to the mess hall. That's some really strange behavior.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I do like the fact that there's some really good there's some really good timing and pacing with dramatic moments and then giving it a little bit of levity with some of these humor moments. Like I like that Harry tried to say basically this dramatic goodbye, and she says, no, you said something along the lines of, you just told me the comments are tiresome.
Right.
So that was really funny, very charming, but you're right. I know, for dramatic purposes, Harry had to have the brush, but it would have been interesting if Lindsay gave him the brush before she left.
Thank you. Yes, that's what we needed. Maybe that is a scene missing that you have to, get it back there. By the way, just a note to 7 of 9, because I know that you're learning how to teach these kids. Don't give them whatever holodeck program they want. They could end up at Club Bromed.
Do we need to find a board babysitting service, or a baby board sitting service? Asking for a friend.
So I alluded to it in the last segment. This is one of those things that I feel kind of ill-equipped to discuss, because in our recording of this show in 2025, our discussion about people's identities and identities that can and do change over time has taken on very interesting and now newly complex social context, political context, et cetera, et cetera. We should be starting from a baseline of just saying, whoever somebody is, whoever they say that they are, that's who they are. And this episode was written at a time before that exploded into the social and political stage. Not to say that those issues didn't exist before. Of course they did. But they weren't the kind of hot button topic that they are now. And I was watching this trying to think, like, how do you have a discussion around what's happening with this character in this episode? And the first thing that I thought was, wow, here's this person who shows up saying, I am this person now, but I was this other person before, and I feel comfortable as that other person. And then the doctor shows up and says, hey, I can just make you look that way. It won't change who you are on a fundamental genetic level, but I can make you more comfortable just to look the way that you want to look. So when you see yourself in the mirror, you feel more like yourself, the self that you think you are. And by the way, super fast. That first, this sci-fi shot in a Provolone, which can do anything on Star Trek, that works,
It's taken over from Triox compound, so.
It has. Well, some people are allergic to Triox, or Retinax. Sorry,
and
Retinax. Yeah. And then Correct. And then Dad shows up. What have they done to you? You used to be so beautiful. And then he dead names her, which in the moment, well, you kind of have to ask yourself, like, she goes from Lindsay to being Jetlaya, and she says that she resisted it for 2 years, resisted being that person. So somewhere in her mind, she was still Lindsay. But then that moment kicks off, well, maybe it doesn't kick it off, but it helps to catalyze this thing that has been going on where she really is questioning who she is. So I kept asking myself, what side are we on here? Is Lindsay dead, or was she reanimated, or is the being that is animated now something completely removed from Lindsay? Or maybe, and I'm just going to answer my own question here because I feel like it could go too far down a rabbit hole of confusion. Is she just an expression of Idic that now there is something better than or different than the original two components?
Well, I mean, that's kind of straddling Tuvix in a way. I know it's not the same story, but it does kind of straddle that same kind of question. I don't want to step all over your notes because
no, you're not going to. You're not going to, and feel free because I don't think that there is any reasonable place for me to land in this for her, for this particular slice of the story, other than to say that whoever it is that she wants to be, whoever it is that she feels most comfortable to be, is who she should be. That's just fundamental to this. I think what's confusing and questionable here is what are all the pressures that then drive that decision, that drive that belief and sense of identity. Because there are pressures around it. Just being on Voyager and rekindling this romance, that is a pressure. And just hearing from this person who shows up and says, no, I'm your father now, and there are people who love you, that is pressure. And ultimately, she has to figure out who she is. But how much of that can we say is just purely her own decision-making? Well, no decision exists in a vacuum. But there's a lot going on here for her to deal with, and I can't help but feel sympathy for that kind of situation.
I needed to come at this from almost being Tuvok in the room, because Tuvok was in the room during the basically kind of like the crux of this one scene.
He was, yeah.
He was, and he didn't really weigh in as much. But the thing that, and I want to take the opportunity to basically say I am saying this with the greatest sensitivity of what we're implying here, when it comes to identity. But the question here is, who has the right here?
Yeah.
Who is in the right here? Captain Janeway says about Lindsay to Correct, we jettisoned her body in accordance with our customs. Correct said, you abandoned her.
Yeah.
Harry said, you had no right to tamper with her remains. And then Correct says, we were acting in accordance with our customs.
I love that line. It's just fascinating anyway, but yes, go ahead.
So now you have these two customs from two species, from basically two parts of the different parts of the galaxy, at odds with each other. So I really, really thought about this, and I tried to outline this as much as I could. If what Janeway said is in fact true, and Ensign Ballard was declared dead and buried according to Starfleet customs of burying their dead, then this was confirmed and certified by the doctor that Ensign Ballard was no longer living or had the possibility of resuscitation. Therefore, was medically confirmed as dead and given all due rights and services according to, as Janeway declared to Correct, our customs.
Yeah.
And once Lindsay was jettisoned from Voyager, she was no longer under the protection of those customs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, I'll just insert here, as I want to hear further where you're going here, but I'll insert here that there's this very interesting, almost like semantic argument about what death is. And by definition, death is a state from which there is no coming back. So it's kind of a misnomer when you say like, oh, a near-death experience or something like, well, to be near death is not to be dead. And if somebody loses consciousness, brain function, heart function, etc., but are revived, okay, they were not dead. Because death, again, by definition, is that state from which you do not come back. So Lindsay was dead. We don't know how long she was in that torpedo tube.
And this was Sarek's argument. This was his issue with what Kirk did to Spock.
Yeah.
Spock, I mean, Kirk thought his friend, for all intents and purposes, was dead, declared dead medically, probably by Dr. McCoy. But Sarek said he wasn't dead. Only his body was dead. His Katra still survived, or should have survived. So again, that's the difference between the customs between human death and Vulcan death, something that Kirk obviously wasn't well educated in at the time. So Correct, though, responded in kind according to his customs and basically said, Lindsay Ballard, she's dead. She's been dead for 3 years. Forgive me for being so blunt, but when we found her, she was a lifeless corpse. We salvaged that raw material to create a new person, my daughter, whom I love.
Yeah.
So he's declaring his intent, his culture, his customs as his right of this Kabari species in the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah.
As Starfleet, does Janeway recognize and respect said rights based on basically giving up the rights over Lindsay Ballard based on acknowledging her final death? So if I were Tuvok, or I'm actually acting as Tuvok, as a fly on the wall in this conversation, the logic, in my opinion, would break down this situation as thus. 1. Ensign Ballard was declared dead and given her final rights as per Starfleet's customs. 2. The corpse of Ensign Ballard was salvaged and repurposed as per the Kobali customs and rights to salvage such discarded genetic remains and materials. Does that sound at cold and calculating? Absolutely. But this is the paperwork that we're dealing with here. This is, again, on logic, not on feeling. But in the middle of all this, the sentient beings of both Ballard and Jetlaya, both Lindsay Ballard and Jetlaya, the former being the latent memories of who she once was, and the latter being the one fighting for her right to exist, as seen through Lindsay's outbursts of being in, in the Kabari language. They are both simultaneously existing.
Yeah.
So who has the right to whom now?
Yeah.
Based on said customs and how those customs have been exercised as such.
Well, and here's where you can really split hairs, is that the genetic material that was Lindsay Ballard does not come back from the state that it was in. It does not come back from being in a torpedo tube for a year, being deceased. So by definition, Jetlaya is a new being. And that being is alive. And that being has rights, at least according to the Kabali. So even if the memories persist, and obviously they haven't done this to a human before that we know of, no other human remains in that area that we know of, that might have been an unexpected factor that they just hadn't accounted for. Oh, wait, every other time that we've done this in our entire history, those memories have gone away very quickly, or they haven't been a problem because other species' genetic materials that we find don't react that way. So this is some new territory in that respect. But because it is new territory, then what do? Do you change your own system? Do you change your own outlook a little bit to say, well, wait a minute, what we have here, what we created according to our custom, how we propagate our species, now we've run into an anomaly. And now this person is expressing rights and feelings and memories that we were not aware of. How much do we, as the Kabali, respect that? And we don't know how long the Kabali have been around and how long they've been doing this and how much of this is sort of codified into their beliefs, their legal system, whatever. I think it's a fascinating idea that we just kind of create a species that does this in the Delta Quadrant. We're Delta Quadrant adjacent. But it raises a lot of interesting ethical problems for them that maybe they've just up until now been able to kind of sweep under the rug.
So where the Vidians were concerned, they were doing it illegally. They were basically attacking innocent aliens,
living
and harvesting their
living
organs.
People. Yeah,
exactly, living like Neelix and Neelix's lungs. Yeah. So they were doing it. They were, literally accosting people or torturing them or keeping them against their will for harvesting purposes and when they needed them. But in this case, with the Kabari, they realized that these genetic discarded materials were left behind for a reason. Mm-hmm. And based on their need for said discarded genetic materials in order for them to propagate their species, they applied their cultural rights, or their species needs to appropriating those. And I don't want to say this insensitive because you are talking about a human body here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, if they didn't want to jettison said body, then why don't they do something like put her in a pattern buffer data stream and put her on an isolinear chip?
Yeah. You could do
that.
Right?
For repurposing later. I mean, they saved all of her stuff They saved the brush. They saved the clothing. They saved a couple of her pads, of which they could have stored her probably her pattern on. So, like, I just don't get, like, they jettisoned those bodies for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, to give the final goodbye service to that person who deserves said service for their crewmates or people that loved them, like Harry loved Lindsay, that finality.
Yeah.
The saying that she is gone and she's not returning.
Yeah.
So can you just basically say, sorry, you know, we're just going to renege on that because she's back?
Right. Man, this is such interesting territory. And I want to move on just a little bit because partly I feel like we will be talking in circles, in good circles, but I'm so curious to hear from our listeners about this and about the implications here and rights and et cetera. And look, this is only, they've scratched the surface because it's a 43-minute show and you can only fit in so much backstory there. But I think they very cleverly, very wisely just boiled that down to, the emotions of one person and then how that is affected by the emotions and needs of other people. It's interesting to have Harry and Carell on two sides here. Carell, the father figure, Harry, the lover, potential lover, and where she gets pulled, where her psychology is when she's getting pulled in two directions here. Not to mention just the quality and value of those memories that she's got. I want to talk about some other stuff, though, just before we close out the segment. I want to talk about Seven. Because it's fun and it's funny, but it's also just really good quality. And I think it's a pretty simple lesson here that she's experiencing, which is, she's hitting the marks. She's reading the book. Like, here's what you do, here's how you make it logical, here's how you make the kids fit with what you want them to learn. But she's completely missing the important context of everything that she's doing. And I don't know if you can teach empathy, but certainly she needs to learn how to step back and try to experience some empathy with what these kids are going through. And I get Janeway's position and Chakotay's. Like, you think it would be easy because she has been Borg. She has been one of them. And she had this arrested development because she was Borg for so long since childhood and has been rediscovering her own humanity. But what she hasn't discovered along with that is the fun of being a child. And I love seeing the parallel of her having the same path as Tuvok, but I feel like Tuvok needs to remember what he did with his own trainees and just really level with Seven and like, no, here's what you need to do.
Yeah, I do love the B plot here.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that Seven has had the luxury of being able to put order where, chaos reigned, because order is something that she was able to enforce upon, like, any type of like chaotic activity or things just like that went completely awry, because she's like, nope, this is how we solve this problem, and this is like the work order or the build order of how to solve that problem in order to prevent further chaos.
Yeah.
Except for the megaparticle. The megaparticle was a little different.
Oh, yeah.
But with these kids, I love the randomness of the kids.
Yeah.
I love that they're all kind of growing into their own. The twins are a little devious. Each has like, it's either do I follow the rules or don't I follow the rules? Because I'll break the rules if you tell me to, but I won't if you tell me to.
Yeah.
And then you have Bazzotti, who's just like, hey, you know what? I'm coming into my own. And I love that. It's like, there's a whole, like, an old cliche. You've probably heard this before. You're in the business. There's an old cliche that Hollywood directors don't want children or pets in their movie because they're too random and too many weird things can happen. Like, children's, like, they'll forget their lines or they'll get upset. Pets will never behave the way you want them to behave, et cetera, et cetera. But I love the idea of having the Borg children here because it gives such a different texture to Seven's outlook. Yeah. On just life itself. I mean, you can only do so much with the Doctor. You can only do so much interacting with the crew because they still have to follow this kind of like this formulaic adult behavior. Right. Like getting to point A to point B in the very adult way. But I just love that these kids are like, we'll just do it our way, because it's either you let us become individuals, which you say you wanted us to be, or we're going to be a collective, which you don't want us to be. So we're just going to do what we want now, especially Mazzotti. I love Mazzotti. Please let her continue to be great. I usually would roll my eyes like when a kid like her like turned the call off at the beginning and say like, oh, of course a kid would do something stupid as that, right? Yeah. But I'm willing to give these kids a chance because they're so endearing and they're so charming and they're so well written. I hope that continues because I like the lightness they bring to the show.
All decks and all departments. Whoever is responsible, please fess up. Who keeps resetting Tom to his Season 1 factory settings?
Well, here we are, John, at the very end of our deliberation and deep dive into ashes to ashes, dust to dust. If you don't take it out and use it, it's going to rust. Anyone heard that one before?
No, that's a good one. That's very good.
So just to give a little bit of levity to the end here, because we did talk about some very serious topics, in our discussion, and maybe we even bring some of that up here when we ask ourselves, as we do with all Mission Log episodes at the end, does this episode hold up? And then we will see if we find any morals, meanings, or messages contained within the episode. We're at the end of Ashes to Ashes. John?
Yeah.
How did this episode hold up or not hold up for you?
It holds up really well, honestly. And just right away, I love the premise of a crew member coming back after they were lost or died, whatever. And then the senior staff doesn't really remember. I mean, Janeway specifically, because obviously Harry has this connection with her. But Janeway in particular, she's like, yeah, I sent you on this mission, but then didn't really think about you afterward. I mean, it was really this kind of disturbing thing. And I had hoped that there had been a little more of a dive into that. Like, are we going to examine how Janeway deals with this idea? Because it's a great scene that they have at dinner together. And Lindsay questions, like, why did you send me? And you could have done this very reflective thing about Janeway and her decision-making. They didn't really dig too deeply into that. But I just think right away, cool idea, have somebody come back that you don't expect to see again and really give that some depth, not just like surprise. Because I asked myself, how would that have worked out if they had brought back somebody that we already knew? And doing that often just feels like a stunt. And I thought, well, wait, why are they introducing a character who now I have to feel something for, but then they're going to be gone by the end of the show? But it's okay. It actually works out really well. And I feel like this episode may get overshadowed by some of the bigger, bolder, more dramatic episodes. But what this does, I think it does very well. Because we have, first of all, a truly strange alien premise to deal with. So great layer of science fiction there. And then we have this very interesting dive into an identity that is conflicted. And that is interesting in its own right. And then we, of course, we have what's most important for drama. We have the emotional impact that's happening with Harry, with Janeway, with Carell, with everybody. And this is something that Voyager, just kind of as a production note, has done very well, and I think Star Trek in general does very well. You have a guest star, and that guest star's arc and presence is truly impactful, but they're not going to be around for the next week. So the story is really about our main characters. And in this case, it's a little bit about Janeway, it's more about Harry, but we got this additional layer of Harry's emotional life. Give him something to do. Just remove Tom from it for a moment, And we mentioned it really at the top of the show. Big kudos to guest star Kim Rhodes, because this character absolutely requires this kind of like confidence and comfort in where she's coming from. And that honestly helps the emotional impact when things start to fall apart for her, when she starts to doubt herself. So you have to start with this just total belief, like, yeah, she's always been here. And this character fully knows who she is. And then you have to see that come apart. And it is handled so well in this episode. So Lindsay just has a lot of presence. The script makes great use of her. But this also, again, it sets us up for this short look at Janeway and her decision-making and this longer look at Harry. And thank goodness, with the introduction of the Borg kids, thank goodness we're actually pushing along the story with them. And I just want to say, look, Voyager, you could have done this all along. You could have had these ongoing plot and character arcs, weave people into the show, and it just works. It does. So, yeah, I think this is terrific. And like I said, I think it gets overshadowed, but a lot of the heavy lifting here is being done by Kim Rhodes. Bravo. What about you?
Yeah, I'm really on the same page with you here, John. I don't know where this falls in kind of the top 10, top 15, 20 lists of, Voyager episodes as ranked by the fans. But for me, it's been, it's kind of one of those memorable ones because it's kind of just comes out of nowhere. You don't have any massive attack scenes or massive action scenes or, the Borg per se, or, and it's super villainous alien of the week. It's a very self-contained story, and I think it's a very important story that's being told. I think that this episode resonates a little bit more deeply with me because I think for those of us either at a certain age or say when life throws us a curveball, and for those of you who have been listening to Mission Log, I've been thrown one hell of a curveball
have, my friend.
Recently.
Yeah.
But that's life. And what do you do with that? What do you have? You only really have your ability to choose where you want to go next. What I love about this episode is that it shows us that the time for living the life you want to live is now, the way you want, not the way others want you to live. In this case, for Lindsay, not necessarily what Harry wants or what Janeway wants or what Carell wants. It's what either Lindsay or Jetlaya wants. So you have to do that now because you don't have the Kabali technology to give you a second lease on life. You don't have the opportunity to get to all these different notes on your list that you should have gotten to before you died, right? So I love that there's that aspect of this episode kind of in contrast, but working at the same time with Mazadi's B plot because she's the youngest of the children. She's the only girl, and she's the most rebellious. So
Right.
in some way, it's kind of are we seeing what Seven could have been, what Annika could have been if she were freed from the Borg at that age?
Yeah.
So I do love that this storyline is there, like you said. I love that it could have been or should be weaved into more stories. It gives a little bit more levity and more lightness to the episode. But I also like how the A and B plot, they work kind of simultaneously at the end when Harry gives Lindsay's brush to Mazadi, and they kind of help each other move forward in that way.
Yeah.
And I like the choice in the writing there that they just move forward together, and see, and as part of now this new kind of found family. And I'm right with you on Kim Rhodes. I think that the writing and directing in this episode is fantastic, but she is impressive.
Yeah.
Across the board. I mean, in her Kabali makeup, in her human makeup, I'm rarely this impressed by a guest star. I thought she was absolutely perfect in this role. I thought her chemistry with Garrett was just so natural, and it makes you just want to watch more. And I'll be honest, a little smitten.
Yeah,
She's smitten. She is so charming.
Yeah, and she's just got this magnetism, which is great. And, it's also a real trick to have the actor who works in their normal human look, but also really works in that alien look. And I have to think that Michael Westmore worked overtime to make that alien makeup, first of all, look alien, but also really appealing and let the actor show, let the actor shine. Right. It's all about her eyes and her smile and her voice, and she just plays it great. Every now and then you get a guest star who shows up once and you just feel like they've been there forever in a great way. And you want to see more of them. And that's how I felt about her. This sounds like how you felt about her too.
Well, that's right. I mean, spot on casting because you wanted her to feel like she has been there. Right? and that sells the character. So I think that this episode's fantastic for all the reasons that you said, all the reasons that I agreed with you for saying my reasons. But it'll be interesting to see where we land, because sometimes we land in the same spot from different angles. Sometimes we don't. So,
yeah. Well, I want to hear from you. What morals, meanings, messages did you pick up here? I think there are fascinating ideas to kick around. Is there a moment, though, that makes you go like, oh, yeah, this is the message they want to get across?
Well, I mean, I was kind of leaning into kind of like what I felt this episode, why this episode was memorable. But there is this one scene that kind of crystallizes the morals, meanings, and messages for me. It's the scene where Lindsay comes to Harry's aid because she's perplexed about her situation, and then he confesses about how he feels, and he asks to kiss Lindsay. And she responds with, "Own the day."
Yeah.
You know, the phrase "own the day." It's the phrase that Harry referenced in her eulogy when he performed her eulogy, and it made me reflect on something personal. So Harry said to Lindsay, reminded her that he said that you always believed in attacking each day, possessing it, and that it was what made you so much fun to be around. And then Lindsay said, "Is that when everyone burst into tears?" And Harry said,
"Yeah.
I said that if you'd been there, you would have told them to own that day, to attack it, make it their own, and plan to do the same thing tomorrow." And Lindsay kind of like was taken aback, and she said, "It's pretty strong stuff."
Yeah.
So own the day for me is it's a Klingon phrase. It's a Klingon saying. And for me, it's their version of memento mori.
Right.
What is memento mori, you may ask, for those of you who are not familiar with the phrase. So from the award-winning and best-selling author of The Obstacle is the Way, Ryan Holiday, and from his website, The Daily Stoic, I'd like to share with you the Stoic philosophy of memento mori. From the Latin meaning, remember, you will die. Memento mori is the ancient practice of reflection on our mortality that goes back to Socrates, who said that the proper practice of philosophy is, quote unquote, about nothing else but dying and being dead. In his Meditations, essentially his own private journal, Marcus Aurelius wrote that, quote unquote, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That was a personal reminder to continue living a life of virtue now and not wait. Also see Carpe Diem, seize the day, or other such axioms.
Yeah.
But the bottom line for my morals, meanings, and messages is this. Today is the greatest day of your life right now, because you can control how you react to today, not yesterday, which is the life you just left, and not tomorrow, because the future isn't guaranteed. Your choices today are exactly what you can control, bringing us all the way full circle to Lindsay's favorite phrase, that Klingon battle cry, own the day.
I love that. I absolutely love it. Yeah. And it's interesting that is sort of her North Star, that is her guiding principle, and had an effect on Harry. And I think it informs that part of Lindsay that lives on in Jetlaya, because maybe any other being who the Kalabi had picked up maybe weren't as possessed with such a strong drive to own the day. And that's what brought her back. But it's also probably what informs a bit of Jetlaya. Maybe to own the day, maybe to seize the moment, is to go back and to live this other life with this other family. Because what she's done on Voyager is completed. She's finished there. There was something going on that you and I hit on earlier that was this really odd kind of ping-ponging with the acceptance that Lindsay gets from the crew, because it's not played very consistently. We're in Act 1, and Janeway's ready to drop the force field. Like, yeah, you seem pretty good. Come on board. great, we're going to give you your old job back. You can work in engineering. So our hero characters, for the most part, are completely on board with this. And that acceptance is really interesting to see, because accepting somebody who is different makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is the rest of the crew in engineering looking at somebody quite askance when they start speaking a different language. That seems like an invitation to curiosity, actually. But I thought that was a strange choice to be made here. In the B-plot, which you and I both find very charming and interesting, it's solid. And it's as solid as what we got with Tuvok and his trainees. That's pretty great. You have to meet people where they are, not force them to be what you want them to be, which, come to think of it, might just overlap a little bit with our A-plot as well. Maybe it's not just all about the hairbrush, Norman, because there aren't second chances, which is really a strong message here in an episode about somebody who got the ultimate second chance. Like, no, that second chance is actually kind of a lie in that respect. So you have to, as you said, seize the day. You have to connect and engage with the world and the people around you in that moment, because you don't really get to come back and have a do-over. And if you do, well, there's, at least from this lesson, there's something kind of off about that, something a little hollow about that. Except, maybe Harry finally got the goodbye that he needed.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you would like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Child's Play.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Chris Garris, Rand Hurl, Tom Kozak, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Shavel, Paul Shadwell, and David Takachi. If the Borg kids are this worked up about Caddis Cod, it would probably be a very good idea to never, ever introduce them to Monopoly. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.